This time around on Author's Corner, I'm really, really pleased to introduce you to Wes Skillings. He joins us here on America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney, to talk about his book. It's called, and the book is so appropriately named too, Mosaic Pieces, Surviving the Dark Side of American Justice. Setting this up, I want you to put yourself in a position where you think you are 20 years old, you are on trial really for your life, and maybe not realizing it, and then you end up behind bars for a murder you didn't commit. And Wes really pieced so much of this together. Wes, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
No problem. I appreciate it.
Let's talk about, first of all, about your background, because you have such your own mosaic of writing of what you've done in the newspaper world. Tell people a little bit about that.
Well, I've been retired since 2011, but I started out as there's a newspaper called The Grit. It was a national publication, which I don't think is any longer in service, but it had 1.5 million circulation nationwide. That wasn't they also had a sister publication. It was a Sunday paper, straight newspaper, about 40,000 circulation in Williamsport, PA. So I was there for 7 years, and this is where I got into this case in 1977. Then I went on to be editor of a couple other newspapers, a daily and a weekly in my hometown. So I retired in my hometown, a block away from the paper I was working at. So all our family's here, so that's why we ended up here. And I won a bunch of awards for Keystone Press Awards. That's a Pennsylvania newspaper. So I won like 15 or 16 in the last 10 or 11 years I was there.
Yeah. Good writer. And you know how to look at things and piece them together. So like I said, that's why your title is so perfect. Tell us about the story and take us back to what happened to Kim Lee Hubbard and then, Jennifer, the murdered girl.
Right. Well, it started of course, with her death. She walked home. She was staying at the Hubbard house. Her best friend was Ruthie Hubbard, who was 12 years old too. She stayed overnight and they were playing all day. She was called home and by her mother was angry that she wasn't home and she was supposed to be home, and one of those deals. So she took off for a walk home. She was spotted all the way home and various places with her coat wrapped around her, tied around her, because it was getting to be warm that day. It was October, but it was a warm October day. And she had the jersey with a 33 on it, which was pretty, and sort of like what they call hippie pants with they're stretched out, had hearts on these. So they're very identifiable. So she was clearly, and then she got to the corner within sight of her house where she was seen by another guy whose testimony was totally ignored in the trial. And then at least a half hour later, she was seen by a supposed eyewitness getting into a car that looked like Kim's, couldn't identify the driver. It was 50 yards away, but she could see the knuckles that it was a man. And the big thing was there's a white construction helmet on the ledge behind on the back ledge of the window car. That became the thing that identified the car. The white construction helmet, which became a whole process in the trial because the helmet that was in the car he didn't get until after she died or after that day. So that helmet couldn't have been in the car. But there was a whole thing in the trial. They brought in another helmet and brought in some guy and said, yeah, he worked there. He probably had that helmet, but they couldn't prove it. So anyway, but it really started a whole crazy quote type of thing. For one thing, they never, like today, they look into a trial, they look at the family first, or those closest to the victim, and work their way out. Maybe it'll end up being a stranger, but that's how they work. They didn't even look at the family then, or at where she went, or the possibility of neighbor, whatever. They immediately, for some reason, decided that the Hubbards that was the place to go. So they converged on the Hubbards, and first thought the father, Joe Hubbard, was apparently a suspect, but he had an alibi, and but they were all over the place. But anyway, it was a traumatic experience for the family to start with, and then in less than a month he was arrested, even though he was taken into the police barracks, agreed to take a lie detector test. He was heavily guarded when he went. He knew they were going to take him out if he failed that test and to put him right in jail. And after the test, everybody was gone. He went home. So he said, I know, I passed that. That's not admissible as evidence, but, that was something, they were trying to get that. And they must have thought maybe he might have done it, or they wouldn't have gone that far. But anyway, the case became just a nightmare of, we had, of course, the main thing was, which something never came up in the trial because the condition of the body was never mentioned in the trial. It turns out experts later, all this was after the trial, all this evidence came up.
Sure.
Two doctors, Dr. Floyd Colson, a guy named Dr. Glenn Larkin, they're both expert forensic scientists. One is assistant to Cyril Weck. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's sort of like been in all these cases. He's sort of the best known coroner, I guess.
Yeah.
And the other guy, Larkins, was an expert on determining time of death. So several years after they were finally interviewed, and it was like the only way that body can be in the field, as they said, was if she was refrigerated. So now we have a case where the body couldn't have been in the field because if it laid there in that weather, there would have been bugs and animals digging at it. There would have been, all the decomposition issues, which she'd probably have been unrecognizable in a lot of ways. But when they found her, she was like, she just fell asleep there,
Wow. So you think of Kim Lee Hubbard, the 20-year-old at the time, and sad story of the 12-year-old Jennifer May Hill that you're talking about in that cornfield, and how that evidence turned, and right. What then later it becomes, and what happens to him. They can't afford a good attorney. There isn't the right kind of investigation as you're describing, and then he's put away. Yeah.
Well, the attorney was known as a guy, he was sort of a showman type of attorney. His name is Patrick Fierro. They called him the one-armed bandit because he was missing one arm, so he gestured with this one good arm. He was a showman, but he was very lazy, so he didn't pick up on a number of things, He thought he had him nailed with the white helmet, but then they brought another white helmet in, and he went nuts and started yelling at Kim and his girlfriend, and it was pretty bad. It was just all so happened. It was I think it was only about a week to 10-day trial. The verdict came on March 1st, 1974. It took them like 4 months from the time the body was found until the verdict. It took them 4 months. Can you imagine that today?
Wow.
Quickly it went through, and the trial itself didn't last very long.
And what happened to Kim Lee Hubbard?
Kim Lee Hubbard, of course, he went to state prison.
Yeah.
It's only one of the interesting things is he was only found guilty of third-degree murder, I guess it was. Anyway, he got a 10 to 20 year sentence. He got out in 10 years. And they're portraying him as a sexually driven, predator.
Right.
Attacking this little girl. Never was any evidence of that. There's no evidence that she died by strangulation. Well, the strangulation to expect if somebody's attacking somebody sexual predator would be there would be marks on her neck. Nothing
sure.
Like that. They think that the cartilage collapsed, so we think she was somebody quick shot today. It was probably accidental, maybe a domestic issue, crime, and not some guy coming in and trying to kidnap a girl. And
So he gets out of prison. As you said, he got the 10. He comes out of prison and he gets married and has his family and moves on, it sounds like.
Yeah, he got out of prison. He said that he had at one point thought, I'm not going back to that town, but the story got out. I did a series on it, and then another newspaper before he got out went a little bit deeper into it with the body stuff. And so by the time he got out, he had a lot of support in town. So he moved back, came back to his home. He felt he did it for his parents because they almost, lost their home and everything because they couldn't pay the bills while he's gone. Because nobody wanted to hire the father.
Connected.
Yeah, it was crazy. And
wow.
So he felt he owed him that, but he was not. When he came back, he wasn't really. His father died like 2 or 3 years after, and very painful death to go through.
We continue our conversation with Wes Skillings about his book, Mosaic Pieces, Surviving the Dark Side of American Justice. More on what happens next with Kim Lee Hubbard.